Hello, everyone, and welcome back to BSG webinars. I am today's host, Wayne Scheck. I'm the Director of Product Strategy for BSG, and I'm super excited to be here today for a topic I find incredibly fascinating. Whether this is your first webinar or you've watched them all, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to join us today. Finding Your Next Beverage Flavor, presented by Kerry, is our 29th episode since the start of our webinar series. If you haven't seen any of our past webinars, please visit youtube.com/bsgcraft, where you can find all of our past webinars and lots of other fun content. Make sure you're signed up for our newsletter to stay up to date on upcoming events. And if you haven't already, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, where we post all of our upcoming events, giveaways, and more. In today's webinar, we're joined by our good friends at Kerry to discuss flavor trends for 2022. If you have any questions during the presentation, please direct them to the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll answer them all at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Kerry team to the screen. And then to get things started, I will turn it over to my good friend Aaron Dow from Kerry to introduce himself and the rest of the team.
Thank you, Wayne. Hello, everybody, and I'd like to thank you on behalf of Kerry for joining. We look forward to working with you through our partners at BSG. As Wayne mentioned, we'll have a Q&A session at the end if there's anything that comes up during this time on the webinar. But I would also ask that if you have any follow-up questions or needs or requests around some of these products that are distributed by BSG from the Kerry flavor world, please reach out to your BSG sales manager and they'll get in touch with us. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to our marketing group who are going to drive us through finding your next beverage flavor.
Hello, everyone. I want to start by introducing myself. So my name is Abby Schoonover, and I am an activation marketing specialist here at Kerry. And I have been working in the beverage end-use market for a little under a year now and have been enjoying every moment of it. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys today about some of the taste trends, but I'm going to pass it over to Salmia first, and she will talk to you guys about the taste charts.
Perfect. Thanks, Abby. Thanks, Aaron. Without further ado, we will share what our Taste Charts 2022 has been calling out as far as inspirations and trends, specifically for the industry that we are in within beverages. That's our focus for today. However, we will talk about some key themes at the start of it. Just as a reminder, please make sure you're on Menti. If Abby, you could go back to the slide that shows them the Menti figures and the numbers. Please make sure that you take 10 seconds of your time right now to go on to menti.com and put in the code 36050764. Make sure that you're on it because we will be asking a couple of questions through the process. Make sure that you're attentive, but also just to be just to have a little fun through the process and get a little bit more information from each other as well. All right, Abby, thank you so much. You will see this code appear multiple times during the Menti screen as well. If there is any issues, please kind of put it in the chat and someone will be there right there with the code for you as well. All right, so let's dive into the inspiring food and beverage innovation flavors of this year. We have been running this program now for about 10 years plus at Kerry. And throughout the course of these 10 years, we have been discussing different themes that have come up. So Abby, it's fine. Let's move on to the next slide. You will see these 6 themes as strong themes in flavor, specifically for us in the audience as well as us in the presentation team to talk about. Now, there are 6 specifically for the beverage category that we've pulled out. The 6 of them, let us go through those briefly. The first is florals and botanicals, very self-explanatory here, but by florals and botanicals, we mean rose, orange blossom, thyme, juniper. You see a lot of those botanical flavor inspirations in beverages today, even moving into other categories like sweet snacks and desserts and so on and so forth as well. This is spices, and we'll dive deeper into each of these buckets, and Abby is going to talk more about it as well. But the 6 themes here that we want to cover, just make sure that you're kind of going through these themes. We want to ask a couple of questions too. So keep your Mentimeter, your Menti site really at quick access. The second piece is spices, again, cardamom, nutmeg. I personally love this bucket myself because cardamom is my favorite flavor, just to let you know. Then we have bold heat flavors, which has been now about the 6th year in its presence on our taste chart themes. So over the course of those 10 years, we've been kind of looking at how these trends have been evolving over the course of our taste charts as well. But bold heat, so when you're looking at not just those experiential bold flavors like ghost pepper, which is more, that adventurous kind of flavor bucket, but we're also looking at kind of commonplace hot honey really rising up this year as well and influencing the beverage category too. You then have tropical fruits, which is particularly what we wanted to call out is yuzu and calamansi. And then you have an over-the-top indulgence, which we see in the COVID post-pandemic or, near close pandemic impact. Desserts and over-the-top indulgent flavors have been shining throughout the last 3 years. So we've been seeing significant rise in those flavors. Up to about 23% of those flavors have been rising across our taste charts too. And finally, you see new frontiers, which is more that experiential. People want to know something new. They want to be engaging in a new novel flavor that they haven't tried before. So now that you see these 6 themes, we want to ask you a question because we can focus our conversation on particularly these themes, but we'd love to know from the crowd right now, which of these themes really are rising up to the top for you? Which of these do you think you are personally curious about? So the next slide here, Abby will walk through the Menti figures as well. So you will have a pop-up on your end on Menti to ask you questions on which of these themes are most important to you. I see a lot of figures coming through. Let's see those responses coming in. We see right now New Frontiers is taking the limelight. And then we're seeing a lot of indulgent flavors, definitely New Frontiers. So we are really looking at that adventurous kind of group of flavors, if you may, like tamarind and, flavors from Latin America and from the Asia Pacific regions. Perfect. I think we have a clear winner here, Abby. I think we will focus our attention certainly on the other themes as well, but we will look at how New Frontiers is really playing a significant space within the beverage taste charts as well. So let's explain what these taste charts are. You've been hearing me say taste charts for a couple of minutes now. Let's look at what the taste charts are. Like I said, it's a program that has been running for about 10 years. Personally, within the insights function, that's who I represent. I'm part of the insights function at Kerry. And we look at taste globally. So this snapshot here takes you through the methodology and the purpose, really like what's the philosophy of taste charts. What it tells you is that we look at taste charts as an inspiration across all food and beverage categories, right? So there is not one exclusion. We have taste charts specifically divided into 5 specific categories. We have sweet taste charts, so you can see what's really happening in the world of desserts and granola bars. You can see it by salty snacks. So what potato chip flavor is going to launch next year. You also see savory, which is all of your meals and meats and all of the kind of food service elements there as well. And then the last 2, which is beverage, we have split it up into 2 buckets, specifically one that is based in dairy and hot beverages. So you'd see things like tea, coffee, cocoa, alcohol that has like dairy inspirations. All of those categories would be in hot and dairy. But then you also have a secondary beverage chart, which is cold and water-based. So you'll see all our juices, cocktails, energy drinks, all of those in that bucket. So we split up beverage for 2 reasons, because we started to see that flavors really take a different level of evolution on our taste charts and over the course of consumers' palates, which is why we've differentiated that and gives us a lot more granularity on these figures too. A key piece before we move on to these slides is to understand how our taste charts are really built. If you haven't seen these before, or if you've seen this as a great refresher, our taste charts, each of them are broken into 4 different buckets. Sorry, Abby, can we please go back to this slide? Thank you. So the 4 key pieces that you'll see is mainstream flavors and key flavors. So those are 2 buckets that you will see that have been long-standing flavors that you will see in the marketplace for about 5 years. So vanilla, strawberry, think vanilla, strawberry in that sense. And we also look at up and coming and emerging flavors. So you'll see these 4 buckets are really spanning through all of our taste charts. The second piece, the second slide, next slide, Abby, gives you a purpose behind why we do taste charts. And I get this question a lot in the beginning years of our taste chart is why are we really doing it? Why do we need to really see all of the flavors in the marketplace? Because I could go into Nielsen or I could go into any of those kind of vendors and see what's the popular flavors in the marketplace. Now, I'll give you 2 answers to that. One, it is a hindsight view of flavors that have already been in the marketplace, right? If you're looking at a snapshot in the marketplace in terms of sales and in terms of product launches, it gives you a state of the market that's already happened. It's done, right? So in that sense, it's already in the past. What our taste charts aims to do is look at the foresight of flavors, is to push us against the future of taste and nutrition that we will see coming forth in product launches the year after, 2 years after, 3 years after. So there is a reason why we do these taste charts and why we take a combination of efforts in order to do this. Certainly we have data that supports this, but we also look at kind of consumer language. We look at social media chatter. We look at Google Trends. We look at what's really happening on the menu and off the menu. We look at a multitude of resources and sources to get us to a taste chart. This example here shows you the life cycle of caramel. So to pull out an example of one flavor and how it really evolves on our taste chart, we've taken up caramel and salted caramel in combination. The graph over here shows you how caramel as a flavor or salted caramel in combination, or how those flavors really evolved since 2004. So you're really going back in time to start noticing, has caramel really been popular all the time? Well, the graph says no, not really. It has been growing in popularity and has taken on different connotations here as well. So you'll notice that on our taste charts from the last 10 years, caramel first appeared on our taste charts as a mainstream flavor in the sweet category, clearly as a caramel syrup or a caramel topping, caramel swirl in ice creams and so on. But you will notice over the course of the years from 14 to 15 to 16, caramel has started jumping beyond the sweet bucket into other buckets, right? Like you're kind of seeing in 2014, it appeared as a salted caramel as a key flavor in beverages. So you start to notice that caramel is no longer just kind of sitting in its safe space in sweet, but it is inspiring other categories as well. And you see those flavors growing. To now, you will see in 2020, when we did that view, you will see it is across all categories, right? Like all of the categories from salty snacks to sweet to meals, all of them have caramel as a flavor. And that's the reason why we look at taste charts as well, is not to catch a flavor at the time of it, kind of emerging and blowing up, but we catch a flavor early on and then keep our eyes on it to see if it's really evolving, right? Like, is it really growing? Is it going to be a breakout flavor or not? All right. So without further ado, we will show you 2 charts. The first one being water and cold. So remember, these are all kind of categories that is juices, cocktails, energy drinks, sodas, pops, and the sort as well. Even functional waters, which is flavored waters, sparkling waters, would be within this category. If you remember, the taste charts are broken out into 4 segments. The hindsight, which is mainstream and key, those are mass flavors that are appealing to everyone. So these are flavors that would be top 10 flavors for the last 5 years, right? So between mainstream and key, these are flavors that you will see across the marketplace. Like I said, think strawberry, right? Those are flavors that are mainstay. So when you're looking at a mass market product, consider that in mind. If you really want a beverage to appeal to a larger set of consumers, you definitely want to be thinking about mainstream and key flavors and picking up choices from them. Certainly combinations are possible. You can, mix and mingle. Think about this as your toolbox, if you may, right? You can pick and, mix. I'm sure the team here is more than capable to help you out with those examples too. On the second piece, you'll see up and coming and emerging. And these are flavors based on growth. Flavors that have been growing specifically for the past 3 years are up and coming flavors, which is the 20 fastest growing flavors for the past 3 years, which is up and coming. you'll start to notice that's where you see quite a bit of those new frontier flavors. So if you remember, quite a few of you are interested in understanding what those new frontier flavors look like. And for instance, we've been pulling out flavors like prickly pear. You see a lot of those kind of inspirations coming up from the other categories that you wouldn't have really tasted those flavors in the past, or consumers wouldn't have, and that's where they pick up those flavors from. You also see lychee, again, inspirations from across the regions, where you see those kind of flavors really rising up. Yuzu is another one that kind of tends to rise up as a bucket of new frontier flavors. A key piece to notice here is you are looking at the US taste charts. We have the same version across 20 other regions across the globe. We have one for Canada, and we have, several of these taste charts for across APMEA, Latin America, and such as well. Why is that important? It's because we can see what flavors could anticipate, entry within the US marketplace as well. So those new frontiers typically think about flavors that are inspiring from other regions as well. And we start to notice flavors like yuzu, lychee, prickly pear used to be, key flavors in other regions and other categories, and they slowly made their way into the US charts as well. And just for those folks who are still curious about the botanicals, florals, spices bucket, it's very clear here. There are certain themes that are in the emerging. So the last fourth bucket here, which is the emerging flavors in the last year alone. So these are really like quick hitters, right? Breakout flavors. You will see 3 specific buckets within there. So there is one, which is the sweet treats. Like I said, everybody loves that over the top indulgence. And we see a lot of flavors like cake, marshmallow, s'mores, like muffin, right? Candy, all of those kind of really indulgent, dark, early flavors really coming up as being strong, even in the beverage, water, and cold taste chart. And then look, this is my favorite. We see cardamom here. Cardamom is an up and growing flavor here. You also see florals like basil right there in up and coming. I know I'm moving my cursor, but clearly you can't see where I'm moving my cursor. So you go into the up and coming flavors here, and it is right there in the bucket of basil and cardamom. Those are really strong. Those are flavor buckets like spices and chili and habanero and jalapenos that are really shifting how people are not just having beverages at food service locations or bars and pubs and like so on and so forth, but it's also happening on a retail level. We even see this, kind of change influencing private label products too. So it's just happening across the board, and we can no longer ignore the fact that there are these kind of new buckets that are rising up to the top as well. All right, we'll switch gears to the beverage chart, which is dairy and hot. One thing to notice, the reason why we have kept those two separate is because each of these flavors seem to have a different path of evolution across, right? So you noticed cardamom and basil was in the up and coming bucket. So the third bucket in the water and cold chart. But you see now cardamom and basil are actually emerging within the segment. And this is important to notice because the application you're trying to develop, you need to understand where consumers are in that timeline and where is the flavor evolution here. So frontier flavors, for instance, is significantly behind the water and cold chart. Right? So frontier flavors here would just be making its way. We start to notice a few of them rising up. Rose hip has been one of them that has kind of made its way into the taste charts, sometimes for dairy and cold, and kind of falls off. So it will take a couple of periods for it to kind of stick onto our taste charts for dairy and hot. But you will notice there is a stronger focus on sweet and indulgence in the dairy and hot taste chart. So think coffee, think, dairy-based beverages, think even performance nutrition, if you may. Shakes and smoothies, like all of those would be in this group of charts. And you start to notice that there is a lot more of an association with those emotional kind of indulgent level flavors here. But that's not saying that the heat and florals, botanicals, spices is not making its way and its presence felt here, because you see them all in the emerging bucket, where you see flavors like cardamom, lavender, basil, sage, horchata, black pepper really rising up to the top in that space too. So that's one key piece to notice. Keep these taste charts in mind. This is also available for you. Abby will share a link of all of the taste charts so that you can download them yourselves and take a look at them. Remember these taste charts and remember these themes when Abby walks through each of these trends and dives deeper as well. Abby?
Yes, so we have one more mentee question for you guys. So just want to know, were there any flavors that you saw in the taste charts that stood out to you or maybe surprised you? Ones that, you know, maybe not the mainstream type category or flavors? Marshmallow and guava. Yeah, marshmallow is an interesting one, especially in the water and cold category. You would think that that would be more in the dairy and hot or like those creamier type beverages.
Mhm.
Rosehip.
And guava is one that has kind of risen, Abby, you know, over the course of like
Mhm.
periods, if I get the numbers right. But it's been about 4 years that guava has kind of made its way into sweet and into water. And we see those two categories really, like beverage, really inspiring and taking inspiration from the sweet categories a lot more. So we see kind of guava kind of shifting across those taste charts until it's going to be mainstay.
Yeah, I feel like I've been seeing a lot of guava in like beers and ciders lately too. I feel like that's a pretty common flavor there. Um, pumpkin spice only being an up and coming. Do you want to comment on that, Tamia?
Think about pumpkin spice not just being a dairy and hot flavor, but pumpkin spice now making its way into water-based beverages. So like think about energy drinks and think about cocktails, things that you wouldn't naturally see consumers kind of gravitating towards pumpkin spice. Because when you look at market information, you start to realize that pumpkin spice solely has really won over the coffee segment, right? And into those categories. But we now start to see, hey, pumpkin spice is no longer there. It's also kind of old news with it. If you would have seen the pumpkin spice fall menu, people were now focusing on apple for coffee, right? So I think the newness of the aspect of pumpkin spice has kind of now made its way into other beverage categories rather than just being as a hot beverage or in coffee.
Right. All right, so I will move on now. So before we dive any deeper into the taste component, I want to take a brief moment to go through just like the current state of the industry. So alcohol consumption in 2021 was not quite at the same levels as it was in 2020. After settling into this like new sort of lifestyle that we're all living with, many consumers have already changed their drinking habits or are saying that they're going to start drinking less in the future. And a lot of the reasons for this is physical, mental, emotional well-being. But you know, with that being said, beer and wine still does hold over 60% of the alcoholic beverage category. And this is based off of alcoholic beverages that were launched globally between October 2020 and September 2021. So you'll see there's a pretty big split with beer and wine there, and then the spirits taking up the that latter third. But some of these high growth, like what to watch type categories that we want to keep our eye on are some of those rising stars like hard seltzer and hard tea that have saturated the market, but then also a lot of newer ready to drink cocktails and hard coffees are growing in popularity because of the premium feel and the convenience that comes with it. And then in terms of spirits, tequilas, mezcals, and cognacs are rising pretty rapidly. So that's a brief look at the industry overall. And then we're going to tie it back to these global taste trend stories. So I'll be walking you through 6 global taste trends that we at Kerry use to help us better understand taste, products, and brand choices that consumers are making this year in 2022. And then every year it's cool to go back and look at previous global trends. But these 6 trends are globally aligned with region-specific details and certain nuances that are applicable in both the food and beverage category. But the information that I'll be showing you today, I have made specific to beer and spirits. So while these trends are definitely influencing which case of beer they might grab from the cooler, they'll also be influencing things like breakfast menus and QSRs, restaurants, and then distillers all across the US and the world. So to help you visualize these trends quickly before I go any further in depth, I put together this video that will help you see how you can take one simple popular drink, which is the vodka lemonade, and then curate it to fit into all of these different categories. So I will play that for you guys really quick. There won't be any sound, but that shouldn't take away from the overall experience. So let's see if that will play. Here we go. All right, so I know that that was pretty quick, but as you can see from that video that we saw, these 6 trends that we have developed for the ones that are impacting taste this year in 2022 are license to thrill, conventional surprises, over the top indulgence, tasty but healthy, authentic memories, and then the providence with a conscience. So we're seeing now that as consumers are beginning to move past this pandemic mindset, they're a lot more open to exploring new tastes and flavors. And while these taste needs are evolving to mirror preferences today, changes based off of prior to the pandemic, these new consumers are ready to indulge, and they're looking for new and exciting flavors that fall within these 6 categories. So I have a quick question for you guys. It's been a while. So this is in reference to the license to thrill trend. So if you were given no restrictions, where would you go first to try and experience some new tastes or flavors? Anywhere in the world. Could be in the US, could be in a different continent, but anyone? Japan? Yeah, I've never been there. That would be interesting. Yeah, I would say Asian influences would probably be what I would pick too, just because I haven't gotten the opportunity to travel there yet. Got some good answers here. All right, so I will take us into license to thrill now. So when we're looking at license to thrill, I like to think of this trend literally as like a license or a passport that helps us travel through taste in the different ways that we choose. So consumers are gravitating towards what excites them in unfamiliar ways, or through tapping into those multiple sensorial experiences that, you know, create a very well-rounded experience, and not just, you know, a typical cocktail or beer. So the things driving this trend is definitely a desire for adventure and change, but without sacrificing on taste or quality. And so they kind of get that feeling of possibly experiencing something new again in a thrilling and new format. So I think this is also why this trend is heavily associated with unique flavor pairings and those like sensory appeals. So whether it's things like boba or gold leaf, or even a QR code that you scan, this is the type of drink that you have to take a picture of before you drink it, because you want to share the experience with other people. It's more than just a beverage, and it's a whole experience. So that the Y of the Tiger that they offer at PF Chang's, that they came out in the beginning of this year actually, was served on a coaster with a QR code that then like activates this like really cool like animation of a tiger like on the camera on your phone. So like that's just one way that operators are getting creative and making their cocktails, you know, taking it up a notch from just a drink to a whole experience. And then you've got some interesting ways of thrilling in other ways, like this potato flavored vodka that Arby's released, or this porter that's layered with a lot of different interesting flavors like vanilla, Madagascar, and Indian chili peppers. So consumers are interested in these global exciting flavors, and 50% of them say that they're looking for these flavors on their menus. So this is License to Thrill. I hope that gave a brief understanding of that trend. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I will move on to the next one, which is conventional surprises. So while many consumers are those very adventurous, license to thrill type consumers, there are still those ones who are not quite as adventurous. So this is where conventional surprises comes into play. These consumers are seeking those comfort classics and nostalgic flavors that are maybe a little bit safer, but they still provide a feeling of surprise or excitement. A lot of times this is reached through different seasonal flavors that are associated with like holidays or times of the year. So adventure and novelty still play a big role in what's driving this trend, but it's not as out there as the license to thrill, those types of flavors that we would see in that trend. So some interesting market examples of these conventional surprises is this collaboration between Barefoot and Oreo, which is not something that you would typically probably pair in your brain, but it's a interesting collaboration that's surprising to consumers to see two brands that they're very familiar with collaborate in a way that they would not typically expect. And then this margarita example, the smokiness is just one way to elevate a classic margarita just with that smoky flavor that is maybe still a little bit new to a lot of people. If you're like to think of yourself as a foodie or someone who loves cocktails, smoke may not be new, but for a lot of people it still is. So that's the conventional surprises trend. And one quick question for you guys. What percentage of launches in spirits and liqueurs in the last year had a limited edition claim? Let's see if I can start the quiz. Okay, I think it's gonna let you guys answer in just a second. Okay, there we go. So when we're thinking about spirits and liqueurs, how many of those launches in the last year do you think had limited edition claims, or those seasonal ties? Okay, so a pretty even split between 11% and 29%. It is 29%. So 29% of those launches in the last year were had that limited edition claim. So these are the top 5 positionings for beer and cider, and then also spirits and liqueurs. So in conventional surprises, one of those ways to appeal to consumers is through seasonal flavors and limited edition and LTOs. And you'll see that this is a clear trend that consumers are aware of these positionings, and they're more likely to gravitate towards something that they know is limited edition, like for example, the Agent 77 limited release beer that came out that was with the James Bond movie. That was pretty interesting. Like something like that feels like it has a sense of urgency to it, so that you can be a part of that limited edition group that gets to try it. So conventional surprises in the market is that. If anyone's curious about these percentages, so 29% of down here, spirits and liqueurs was limited edition, 11% traditional, 5% indulgent and premium, and then this no additives and no preservatives were pretty low at 4% and 3%. And then beer and cider, this was 16%, which was a pretty big jump from last year, only at 8%. So that's that. I will move on now to our next trend, which is over-the-top indulgence. So we saw a lot of this probably on the taste charts, and Samia touched on this briefly, but indulgence is very big. And while health and well-being is top of mind for most consumers nowadays, we all still need to indulge every once in a while. So whether you view indulgence as a reward or a celebration with family, or just something that you love to do every day after dinner, this trend of over-the-top indulgence has become very popularized, and people are reaching for those decadent and over-the-top desserts and drinks that are eye-catching, and the eye-catching aspect of it certainly lends to its belonging on social media, which I think is another big driver behind this trend, aside from just the premiumization and the indulgence aspect. But it's also that feeling of getting to take a picture of this like super elaborate cocktail, or like really brightly colored green beer or something, and posting it on your Instagram or on your Snapchat and just sharing it with your friends. So this over-the-top indulgence trend is definitely driven by social media, and these areas of indulgence and craveability have grown with flavors that are very bold or premium, or like the exclusivity of the offerings. So that's the over-the-top indulgence, and you see a lot of dessert-inspired flavors here. So things like cakes and cookies and pies and churro. And it's interesting to see this now go into beer. I would say cocktails were probably always perceived as like a little bit indulgent, but beer is, consumers are starting to see more of those product examples like these lemon bars dessert or the peaches and cream milkshake IPA, that are, inspired by desserts or have that very sweet after dinner type feeling. So that's the over the top indulgence, and I will start one more question for you guys. So which month of the year do you think has the highest alcohol and beer introductions each year? So March, May, July, or December? And this is just like new product launches every year. Between March and May, it is March, and this was by a landslide. So in both beer and ciders and spirits and liqueurs, March has the highest number of new product introductions, and this can be heavily attributed to St. Patrick's Day. The most other launches were in the summertime, aside from March. So now if we're looking at this reliving authentic memories trend, this one has gained a lot of traction, I think in part because of the pandemic and how a lot of people are still reverting back to and appreciating those classic, nostalgic, traditional flavors, flavors that invoke like childhood memories or remind you of your culture or family or your hometown. Those memories are very meaningful to a lot of us. And it allows us to go back to tradition, or taking something that was maybe perceived once as old and making it new again. So classic spirits and traditional cocktails are getting a twist and having a moment in the market as younger generations are starting to embrace these traditional alcoholic beverages in more fun and trendy ways. So one of these interesting new releases, Tip Top, is a 100 milliliter can, and it's probably the cutest, smallest little can you would ever see. But it's an interesting take on a ready to drink cocktail that is something that's been around for a while. And we maybe don't see as much newness in that category of, canned cocktails, but there's a lot of innovation in the space now as people are looking, for that authentic, premium, high quality cocktails and beers. So people are also taking to social media and becoming their own mixologists and bartenders at home, sharing and collaborating on these recipes. And the presentation definitely does matter. 64% of consumers say that the presentation of their food and beverages is important, of the dining aspect. And consumers like things that make them feel safe and familiar and remind them of home. And that is a big part of this reliving authentic memories. And the authenticity is very important in the flavors and ingredients and where they come from and how they're used. And everyone, has their maybe their special home beverage or their own particular way that they make a Bloody Mary that's unique to their family, the secret ingredient. So there's always going to be that aspect of it where it means a lot, the age-old techniques and handcrafted nature of all of it. So when we're looking at cocktails on US menus, which cocktail do you guys think had the highest 4-year growth on US menus? Got a couple options: the hot toddy, Kentucky Mule, the margarita, and old fashioned. There's been quite a lot of varieties of the Moscow Mule lately, whether it's a Mexican Mule or a Kentucky Mule or just the classic Moscow Mule or all of these interesting flavor variations. It is the Kentucky Mule. So the old fashioned and hot toddy were right up there along with the Kentucky Mule, but the Kentucky Mule had 119% 4-year growth on US menus, which was crazy. So I will take us now to the tasty but healthy trend. So this trend is heavily driven by health concerns and the fact that we used to say health halo. There's the health halo of ingredients and how consumers perceive them, but it's not just a halo anymore. It has now become a top of mind thing that consumers care about pretty much at all times. And when we think alcohol, a lot of people don't necessarily think healthy, but you still can make healthy choices when you're consuming alcohol. So non-alcoholic beverages have had a lot of growth in the past couple years, and consumers are seeking these types of lower alcoholic beverages, or just options that have zero sugar, or are made with natural flavors, or just have those like health perceived benefits. So like I said, a lot of consumers are lessening their consumption of alcohol, and the ones who are looking for these non-alcoholic beverages aren't completely sober, but they maybe just want to have a healthier lifestyle, or maybe have lost some of the interest that they had in alcohol. And I think one thing that's interesting when we're looking at no and low alcohol in the alcohol space is that consumers who do consume no or low alcohol, 58% of them report that they still choose to switch between no or low alcohol and full strength alcohol on the same occasion. So someone could be at, like a barbecue with their family and switch from a like very low 1 to 2% ABV cocktail back to a higher, maybe like 9 or 10% ABV, and they're doing that within the same occasion. So you have to think that someone who consumes low alcohol beverages still is probably interested in those higher ABV ones. It just depends on the occasion. And there are flavors that are associated with health. So like in alcohol, you maybe can't always have the actual health benefits, but you can have that perceived health benefit that comes along with the flavors. So things like black tea and green tea or kombucha, those are beverages that have become very popular as hard or spiked versions, but people also like them because they maybe feel a little bit better about the choices that they're making when they're drinking a hard tea or a hard kombucha. So that's the tasty but healthy trend is definitely there to stay, and sugar reduction is another big part of this. Hard seltzers, 30% of the launches in the last year had a sugar-free claim, and sugar reduction is rapidly growing just in general in the beverage category. So that's that. And I have another question for you guys. So spiked and hybrid versions of popular drinks are taking the alcohol market by storm. So sales for what particular drink went up 31% in 2021 between hard tea, hard kombucha, and hard coffee? I may have given it away. I might have been talking about it a little bit too much. But we'll see what everyone thinks here. Couple more seconds. Kombucha, yes. So kombucha went up 31% in the last year. Hard tea went up, hard kombucha, hard tea went up 23%, and then hard coffee went up 12%. So this last but not least, the final trend that I'm going to be taking you guys through is provenance with a conscience. So this is maybe not as much of a flavor focused trend, but more so focused on where those flavors and ingredients and tastes are coming from. The sustainability and sourcing aspect is a big driver here. Authenticity in ingredients, the authenticity in sourcing, and then also authenticity in like the messaging that the brand is conveying. Consumers care a lot more about brands and the values that they have, and it's not the most important thing, but consumers do like it when their own personal values align with the brands that they're purchasing products from. And it can make for a more loyal consumer. 57% of consumers do think that it is a good idea for food and restaurant brands to take a stand on issues and express their values. The consumers that don't think it's as great of an idea are the older generations. Baby boomers don't think that this belongs, but Gen Z almost think of it as a requirement in some regards. So it's an interesting space that people are still navigating, but that's one thing that operators have to keep in mind. Consumers are looking for things like that sustainability sourcing aspect, but also their own personal needs, whether it's gluten-free, vegan, sugar-free, plant-based, those sort of things. So the provenance is an important aspect here, and this got a couple examples of that. So this Wild Roots was handcrafted in Oregon, which gives it that local and handcrafted appeal that a consumer might grab to if they see something like, oh, it's made in my home state. They're maybe more likely to buy it. And these other two options, or last two product examples, are some good examples of how brands are using the sustainable choices that they're making as messaging, and how that can be a good thing. So carbon negative, plastic free packaging, and calling that out is a big thing. So that's provenance with a conscience, and that's something that we all need to be thinking about when it comes to packaging and how we do that. So we have one last taste chart to tie it back. So bringing it back with what Samia started it off with. This one is a little bit different, looking at longstanding versus emerging ingredients in the functional, sensorial, alternative, and premium categories. So the ingredients on the right-hand side may not be as familiar to all of us, but they're ones to keep an eye out moving forward. And these long-standing ones, hopefully, we probably are familiar with. So a lot of these flavors and ingredients can be utilized in a variety of formats that bring all of the trends we just went through to life in a different or interesting way, like the collagen falling into tasty but healthy, or gold leaf and edible flowers that can fall into the license to thrill trend, and truffle and caviar, the premiumization, and just all of this can fit into the different trends that we talked about, and bring those to life in different ways. And consumers are a lot more familiar and interested in those actual ingredients that go into their drinks. So like I said, with the sourcing, they know a lot more of these names, and they know what they mean, and they want to call out. They want us to call that out. So when we're looking at this chart, if you don't currently utilize any of these ingredients, I challenge you to come up with a concept that maybe has a few of them and think outside of the box, because that's what these charts help us all do, is to find inspiration for our next beverage flavor. That's what we all use them for, is inspiration. And we hope that you guys can use them as that too. I look at the charts every day, and it's a nice way to unstuck your brain if you're ever stuck on a new flavor idea. So that is all that I will be presenting to you guys. And we now have some time set aside for a Q&A with all of our Kerry people. So Erin, Samia, and myself are obviously available for questions, but we also have the rest of these amazing people on that are available and can answer any questions in the chat. So if you have any questions for Chica, our brewmaster, or anyone in marketing, or Travis and myself, feel free to ask away. We are happy to answer questions.
Are we trying to use?
Thanks, Abby. I'll jump in and I can help usher along some of this Q&A. And I guess I can prime the pump a bit with my question, which is, if you guys had to give one recommendation to the folks listening right now on how to use this maybe tomorrow in their day-to-day business, what would be the biggest tip you would give them to come out of here?
I would say think outside of the box. But yeah, I would say you have to try and get creative with it's hard to get creative when there's so much creativity happening. But yeah, yeah.
He's gonna unmute.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can jump in from a taste perspective. So gosh, there's just so much you can take here and so many opportunities. And, you know, even when you think just within the category of beer, the different ways we can take it, the different, you know, indulgence that play within your stouts and your porters, and, you know, how we can just really move, to Abby's point, outside of the box to get new, fun, creative things, and really to open the door to new consumer groups that maybe traditionally you might not have had within the traditional beer groups that maybe you are catering to. So there's a lot of options, and there's a lot of fun, different ways we can take the different categories within this.
I would say likewise, you know, if your business allows, testing out an LTO. So testing out limited edition just to kind of see, and also really assessing and knowing where your audience is. I think that's where those taste charts come into play. You know, if you have a more, either a larger or a broader audience, or sometimes I pick on my dad, but even an older generation audience, you know, sticking with some of those mainstream and key flavors are going to be your best bet. Those are going to be your best sellers, versus if you have a younger, more adventurous audience, you know, you can kind of start to toy with some of the flavors in that emerging or up and coming category.
Can I add one more thing, I guess, maybe from the product perspective as well? I think it's also understanding what the brand and the product represents as well, because at the end of the day, if you're utilizing flavors and extracts and crystals, you don't necessarily want it fighting against the material or fighting against maybe the image that there's already out there with your consumers of the product. So I think understanding, like if you were to take the flavor charts that we shared earlier, and understanding maybe, you know, putting together a matrix of what makes sense around different beer styles, or whether it's hard seltzer or distilled spirit, what flavors are going to complement and work with that, as opposed to fighting against it. And if there's anything in terms of, let's say, perception of the brewery or perception of the brand or what have you, what enhances that relationship rather than fights against it. So those would also be a few suggestions. But I did want to mention, Wayne, we've got a couple other questions that I guess would be a little bit more technical in nature in the chat as well. So I was going to get Travis and Chica maybe to join in on those questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what you're saying, Aaron, leads well into that about making sure that the flavors and the product work together. So we are getting some questions in the chat about application and when's the proper time to add flavors and how to work best with them. So if you guys have any tips and tricks on working with flavors in beer, I think we can chat about those.
Travis, you want to start us out with the first one?
I'll take the first question. I see one right there that says, what is the mixing ratio for the flavorings offered by Kerry? I would say that it's going to be different based on each of the flavors. They will be different concentrations in order to be stable flavors. Something may be more concentrated than another one, but typically through BSG, we do provide some recommended dosage ranges. And I would recommend, you know, topping off a beer. If you've got something at home that you can just top off and try it, try to get a level that you like, whether that's, you know, like a 0.02% up to a 0.1%. You know, we're going to provide some different dosage ranges through the BSG portfolio there to give you a nice starting dosage. And it's really going to depend what type of impact are you looking for from that product. Do you want it to be really, really fruit forward? Then you might want to go towards the higher end of that dosage range. If you want it to be really subtle and more natural tasting, I'd probably recommend starting at a lower end of the range there.
Yeah, and just to kind of add into Travis's part, guys, what we've seen over the years is every brewer is a bit different in terms of what their interpretation is how forward the flavor should be. Now you see, for instance, in a category like hard seltzer or vodka sodas, where the flavors are really amped up, right? That's very common. But what we see in a lot of beer styles where somebody's, let's say, doing a flavored IPA or a flavored amber ale or what have you, is the brewers typically want those to kind of work in tandem rather than dominate the overall, let's say, aroma and sensory experience there. So to Travis's point, I think a lot of it's just a lot of kitchen chemistry, you know, benchtop work, and getting where you want it to be. And the good thing is one size really doesn't fit all. It allows you to have some creativity with your product. Chica, you want to take the second part?
Yeah, I was going to say the other question speaks a little bit about times during the brewing process. So I don't know, Chica, if you want to give a little bit of conversation about the best times during the process.
Yes. The flavors should be added at the cold side, and preferably in your bright tank. After yeast removal and trouble removal, then you can add it. You will not add it in the hot side because you will lose all the aroma and all the taste that you have. So the cold end of brewing in your bright tank is preferred.
We have another question here in the chat about flavors that are hard to imitate and how brewers can do a better job like that. Do we want to have a conversation maybe about mixing flavors, or Travis, any recommendations you can give about how to boost some of those flavors if they're maybe not getting as much as they want?
I think anytime you're not getting as much flavor as you want, go grab a beer that's similar to the style that you're working on right now, and just start dosing it right there. You can take 100 mils, and if you've got a way to weigh it out, that'd be great. Go ahead and just dose a little bit until you get to that point where the impact is really coming back to where you want it to be. As far as flavors that are hard to imitate, we have a team of great flavors. I don't think that we have a ton that are really hard to imitate. I think we do a very good job, but I would say some of the easiest ones to imitate, ones that we can make very natural tasting, very similar to the real product, is going to be a lot of your citruses, a lot of your fruits. Kerry's very well versed in this. We've been doing it for a long time, and I think that we can make really natural, true to flavor or true to taste flavors.
One other thing that I maybe would throw in on this, Wayne, that people have to keep in mind is that there are certain, let's say, spices and fruits and so forth that are out there that a lot of times we hear in the flavor world, well, people want true to fruit, true to spice. But in reality, most consumer perceptions aren't necessarily aligned with what we consider to be a true to fruit. And a great example on that is something like a watermelon or a raspberry or a cranberry. People that are very familiar with the fruits, but what they don't realize is most of their familiarity actually goes back to natural flavors rather than, let's say, cranberry juice or watermelon juice or what have you. So something important to kind of keep in mind as you put together your finished products is, at the end of the day, what direction am I trying to take my raspberry, my watermelon, or what have you? And is it really true to fruit, or is it something that just needs to be a great watermelon that people are going to say this is unmistakable watermelon or raspberry or cranberry?
Yeah.
Last part to add to that, boosting the likeness, I think it's just important to make sure that you're working with the right style of beer, because the impact coming from, let's say, a lemon going into a lager is going to be very different from the impact coming through something like a stout, where you're already inherently going to have more flavor from the beer itself coming through. So testing in the actual type of beer style that you're looking to add this to is really important.
Yeah, and I think summarizing all of that, I think there's a really interesting conversation to be had about, regional representation of flavors as well. I know, I think it's good to find references that you're looking for. If there is a beer that is, let's use watermelon as the example, a watermelon beer out there that you really like, maybe take some time to analyze the watermelon flavor you're getting from it so you can communicate that correctly. I know with things like orange, there's so many different types of orange flavor out there that one person's orange beer is going to be completely different than somebody else's. So having a good reference sample that you can communicate, whether that's to BSG or to Kerry, and then we can work with you on trying to find ways to solve that. I think there's a lot that can be done there.
Absolutely.
So I don't see any more questions coming through. I guess I can ask the Kerry team, if we want to close it out with one question for us. What do you think, out of all the flavors and all the trends that you showed today, what is the biggest one that's going to have the largest impact on the beer industry in the next, let's say, 12 months?
Thoughts, Nina?
I can take it. So I think maybe this is a little bit of a side swipe here, but the diversification, right? Like the category diversification in beer, in moving into even like, you look at what the seltzer category was 3 years ago, and you look at what consumers are diversifying their everyday beverages. I think we're going to continue to see that. And so from a flavor perspective, it's really exciting on the taste side because people are all about trying the next new fun taste perspective things, anything they can get their hands on. So I think we'll continue to see diversification, but that sets us up in a really fun, as a consumer marketplace, to try a bunch of new things the next upcoming years.
So you're saying wild and out there, the new frontier?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. You guys were spot on with what I was thinking in the beginning too, of that new frontier.
Yeah, my BSG colleagues would be mad at me if I didn't bring out my affinity towards marshmallow beer. So it is always
There you
fun
go.
to see, the marshmallow flavor pop on something like this, and that's my vote. You know, self-serving. I promote the proliferation of marshmallow beer. That's for sure.
I'm in. I'm all in.
Yeah.
Well, if that's nothing else, there's nothing else. I know you guys shared that link. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that link in that survey, just to try and get some more engagement there.
Yes, so I just sent the link again in the chat, but if everyone just wants to fill out that survey, it's just a quick couple questions about your experience with this engagement. And then we will also select one of the people who fill it out to get a giveaway with a Kerry item and some Kerry and BSG swag. We've got some posters and whiskey, the ice molds. So yeah. Yep.
Well, I'll just say thanks again to the Kerry team. Really appreciate the presentation, amazing content, and really enjoyed it. So thanks again. If there are any further questions from anybody in the audience, feel free to email us at info@bsgcraft.com, or per the slide on the screen, you can continue the conversation with us at the Craft Brewers Conference in Minneapolis. Both BSG and Kerry will be there and would love to continue the conversations on some of the topics we discussed here today. And again, past webinars are located at youtube.com/bsgcraft. And be on the lookout for new episodes via the newsletter and our social media channels. So again, from all of us here at BSG and Kerry, thanks again and cheers, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.